Doctor Who, Doctor Who, Doctor Who, Who, Who. The Screen Companion presents Resuscitating the Ninth Doctor, celebrating Christopher Eccleston's run of Doctor Who. Our final adventure in the TARDIS alongside Christopher Eccleston as the Ninth Doctor.
We made it!
We're talking episode 12 and 13 of his season, and because he regenerates, the first regeneration of New Who, I thought it would be fun to take a moment and reflect on classic Who and how they dealt with regenerations. Specifically, the Fifth Doctor, Peter Davison, in the caves of Androzani, Part 4, the end of that story, because that is when he regenerates. John actually watched the entire storyline.
I am better.
Yes, you are more of a geek than me. Congratulations.
Really hoping you were going to say better. You handled that properly.
In Part 4 of the Caves of Androzani, it is the culmination of a multi-part story. I can only give what I could figure out from this final part. I'd considered watching the whole arc, but the first 5 minutes of it were severely dull. And I saw a monster that made me think of the Gorn from TOS, and I couldn't abide such a terrible rubber alien head, although I love that original Gorn.
It was like a big bird. I got Gorn crossed with Rodan vibes.
The eyes being glazed over plastic.
That was a choice. The aliens are high all the time.
Did any part of that mask articulate?
No. No, in fact, I think what you saw was one of two appearances.
I think it showed up again in the final part.
Yeah, I think that was the other appearance. So you didn't even miss any of it showing up.
But all anyone needs to know is that the Fifth Doctor and his companion Perry have been poisoned, and there's a civil war happening on a mining planet as the Doctor retrieves life-saving bat milk. Even though I didn't watch the rest of it, it felt to me like this final part, they saved all their budget for this one. This is where all the whiz-bang happens. You get a firefight at the beginning, the Doctor running away from a couple bad guys, rolling down sand dunes, people's lives are in jeopardy. Since you watched the rest of it, were the first 3 parts all set up?
Yes and no. It was all set up for this, but the Doctor's arc in this was basically to go into space and then turn around and come back.
Were there any major twists in those first 3 parts?
I think a bunch of the good guys turned out to be androids, played by the bad guy, Jack. He looked like Scorpio from Farscape. Scorpius. My bad.
Sounds like we need to rewatch Farscape.
We do.
Since you watched more of this than I did, and this is the only classic Who experience I have with the Fifth Doctor. So tell me, John, what is the Fifth Doctor's personality?
He seemed almost fatherly. I was going to say abrasive, because he seemed angry at the companion the whole time. But, right after regeneration, he's way more abrasive, so... He's very nice. He does sacrifice his quote-unquote life for Perry.
I can't get over that sprig of celery he uses as decoration on his lapel.
He explained it, I think, in one of the earlier episodes. If it turns purple, he's near gas that could kill him.
Even if it does serve a real function, that's so silly looking.
Because it's his last arc. That was not written until then, which means he wore it the whole time without a reason.
Oh, they didn't use that explanation until this story.
This particular story. It was one of the two. He's just like, if it turns purple, I gotta leave. Also, I think the celery becomes super delicious.
Well, and he's trying to wake up Perry and he runs the celery under her nose. I didn't realize celery was meant to ever act as a smelling salt.
Who knows? Like, has he changed it? Has it been on his lapel for the whole... Has it been that piece of celery? So maybe it's just awful.
Gross.
There's some rotting celery. That'll wake you up.
Have you watched any other stories with him in the classic era?
No, I have not.
I guess his Children in Need special with David Tennant, I think he's done it a few times in New Who. But the first time he showed up, I think it was called Time Crash. That was pretty much all the Fifth Doctor I needed.
I'll agree with that. I think his daughter played a recombinated clone of David Tennant's Doctor in season 4.
Jenny, his clone daughter.
You are correct, sir.
What can you say about Perry the Companion?
Just felt pure damsel in distress this whole time.
With a stunningly low neckline.
I wasn't going to bring that up, but yes.
Well, geez, I know so little about her, and she was unconscious for most of the part I saw. That's all I can say. Beautiful dark-haired girl with a weird accent that was supposed to be American. I didn't buy it, did you?
No, it never occurred to me at any point that she was American.
Yeah, that's her backstory. She's supposed to be an American.
Oh, no, no way.
She could only be American if you grew up in Britain.
Exactly. Because they don't need to know. And this was, what, the 70s? They didn't need to know.
80s, damn it. How long have you been in your TARDIS?
Too long. Too long. Oh, 84. Holy crap.
What stands out to you about the regeneration scene?
Instantly, Colin Baker, the new Doctor, had his own personality.
Doctor?
You're expecting someone else?
I...
That's 3 eyes in one breath. Makes you sound a rather egotistical young lady.
What's happened?
Change, my dear. And it seems not a moment too soon.
Watching the new era, it feels like every new Doctor has to take a nap for an episode, while the companion does a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, man, I noticed that too. He had such energy. I liked him more than the Fifth Doctor in the episode.
Yeah, he brought more, because the Fifth Doctor was dying, basically the whole episode. Crash landing like he's, I don't know, Fry from Futurama.
And it didn't sound like the Fifth Doctor distinguished himself in the previous parts.
No, not really.
I did not enjoy how they had the swirling heads as the Doctor was regenerating. What a weird stylistic choice.
That was amusing.
In a bad way.
It was funny bad, because it was... all these heads were trying to give encouragement, and then the Master showed up, and he's just, die.
What was even the point?
I don't know. It's supposed to be like some heartfelt goodbye, and then the Master's just like, I hate you, Doctor. I don't like you. I'm gonna haunt your dreams.
It was so goofy, I had to watch another classic Who regeneration. And for the heck of it, I randomly chose the second Doctor. And would you believe they do the exact same thing?
Oh, really?
With the swirling heads. I'm so glad they stopped doing that. Yeah, that's one thing that didn't need to get translated to New Who.
That would be funny, though, when Eccleston regenerates. It's a bunch of swirling heads. We don't recognize any of them.
To expand a little on what you said about Colin Baker's Sixth Doctor getting a real moment at the end of the episode, in New Who, when one Doctor in his final episode turns into the new Doctor, they always just get 1 or 2 sentences before it cuts to credits, don't they?
Yeah, because it's not their time yet.
And then what was cool is, did you know that the Caves of Androzani didn't even happen at the end of the series?
Really?
I like that. I don't know why it always has to be at the end of an American season that the Doctor regenerates.
That would be weird. Have they done that before, do you know? Was this the only one to do mid-season?
No, it also happened from the first Doctor into the second Doctor.
What was going on with Peter Davison? Was he just like, screw this, I'm out?
I guess, kind of like with two-term presidents, there's a tradition among a lot of the Doctors that the actors only do 3 series, and that was started by Patrick Troughton, the second guy, figured 3 was enough. And I believe he gave the 5th Doctor advice to do only 3 and then leave, so that you don't get typecasted.
Tom Baker didn't listen to that advice at all. He was there for a while.
He was the FDR of Doctor Who.
And they had to pass an amendment to make sure that the Doctors can only be 3 seasons.
I imagine this screen showed up in the previous parts, but at least in the finale that I saw. You notice the screen showing the cave system? That had to have come from an Atari 2600 game.
Yeah.
You could clearly see the score in the bottom corner.
That's right. One of the episodes you didn't watch, the bad guy, Morgus, he was talking to someone on his vid screen. He kept doing the soliloquy. Basically, every time the guy said something, he'd turn to the camera and be like, well, I bet he's up to this. It was his internal monologue. It was really poorly done. And I think they gave Colin Baker that, too. He did a quick break the fourth wall of now for something completely different. After he regenerated, and they're like, what's going on? And then the 6th Doctor looked into the camera and said, a much-needed change.
I remember with Colin Baker, sure. In a previous part, somebody looked right at the camera like that.
Yeah, the guy played...
Oh, I don't like that.
Yeah, the guy who played Morgus did it several times and was basically narrating his own inner monologue for the audience.
I'll forgive that for a regenerated Doctor, but nobody else should be doing that.
Agreed.
The Screen Companion is available on multiple platforms, including Podbean, Amazon Music Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. Tell us your review, vote for what we should cover next, or let certain guests know they're your favorite via thescreencompanion@gmail.com or by posting on the Screen Companion group on Facebook. Thanks to everyone in the States and abroad for listening. Further support the host by purchasing his novel, Traversal, The Weight of Worlds, available in both digital and print formats on Amazon.com. The 5th season of The Screen Companion begins September 1st, 2024. Now, back to the show. But that was a fun little appetizer to get into the main course, which is Christopher Eccleston's final 2 episodes. John, what was episode 12, Bad Wolf, about?
The Doctor, Rose, and Jack waking up in reality shows and being forced to compete, and they realize something sinister is going on.
What do you think of the game show gimmick?
I thought that aged poorly.
Really?
I think it was just because of the game shows they used. Sci-fi versions of what was on then. And they didn't even try to come up with something new.
It's all British game shows.
You Are the Weakest Link. I think it's just called Weakest Link. Big Brother. And basically Robot Eye for the gay guy. Whatever Captain Jack got caught up in.
I realize it's a parody of shows that existed when the episode came out, but I'll argue it functions well in the story because you don't need to remember anything about 2005 to enjoy the context of the deadly games that our top trio are in within the episode itself.
Mm-hmm.
But what was that game with the 2 robots playing dress up with Captain Jack?
I don't know, because they had every intention of just cutting his head off and putting a new head on there.
Yeah, so it doesn't even feel like there are any rules to it.
No.
And they established that citizens are randomly forced to participate. I guess you don't want to be in that game because you're just going to get maimed or killed no matter what.
That's the guaranteed death. It's just Jack was having fun and hiding guns up his keister. His old prison wallet.
I really wish they had a scene where we see him wash his hands. Because he touches people later in the episode, and it's like, oh, what's he do?
He does, yeah, it's gross. Because he's, like, handling the gun. The gun should have had maybe something brown on it. I don't know how he rolls with his personal hygiene. It might be squeaky clean up there.
I might be overthinking this. Maybe Captain Jack is Verse, but to me he gives off top energy, so I don't imagine he would keep it super clean. But maybe he does. Maybe he's that forward-thinking. He's so 51st century.
Anything goes, so all the holes have got to be clean.
And you know, an adventure we didn't see, he reminds the Doctor of that once in a while.
All right, we got to reverse the polarity, and Doctor, just in case you forgot, all the holes are clean.
He's in the TARDIS with the other two. He's like, oh, spot check. Who's 100% clean? Raise your hand. He's the only one.
Oh, it's me? Okay, I guess we know what we're using.
And the Doctor's like, all right, Jack. That's the 20th time you've done that. Put your hand down.
Put your hand down. I'm going to leave you at Planet Barcelona.
Does the Dalek reveal work for you?
Yeah, I think it does. They don't just completely let the cat out of the bag, but you know enough. Anyone who's already seen the show instantly can tell by the POV shot that it's a Dalek.
And when the Doctor enters the Big Brother house, if you look at some of the wall art, they use that spherical pattern on the Dalek armor.
Oh, snap. I don't think I saw that.
Those sneaky production designers. The Daleks didn't work that well for me here. One, because I didn't need the scale of an alien invasion fleet. In fact, the premise of Aliens of London would have made for a fine season finale. How about just the Earth is at stake and not the whole galaxy?
It's escalation. It's the Dragon Ball Z syndrome of strongest guy ever. Okay, there's 10 more guys coming up the pipeline who are also the strongest guy ever now.
Because there are a lot of big ideas between this and the second part. It feels like a lot to take in. Also, after the success of the episode called Dalek, well, now that loses some of its weight because that wasn't the last Dalek. He was a schmuck that didn't look hard enough to find others, apparently.
They were going the reverse Borg route. Starting small and going big, whereas the Borg started big and they kept whittling it down to Hugh.
Rate this story from 1 to 5.
I'm going to give it a 3.
I'll go 3.5 because it has a stellar opening act that tapers off with some contrived details in the second half.
I'll agree with that. My biggest complaint, like I said, was just how aged, because it was era-specific reality shows.
I guess that's our curse, John. If we had just been born after the show premiered, we wouldn't be hung up on that.
We'd have never known. We could have compared it to Squid Games, which kind of is Squid Games, right? Daleks are little squids.
Oh my god! Yes, it is! Netflix in Korea stole it.
Those bastards!
What was your favorite scene?
I liked after the Doctor escaped, and everyone, especially Linda with a Y, is in awe of him just being super smart and bucking the system.
And his way out, he's playing a hunch that if he goes into that separate room to be evicted from the house, that's supposed to kill you, but he doesn't think so. That's a lot to ride on a hunch.
It is. But he was so confident about it.
I'm going to go with a favorite performance. I very much enjoyed Linda with a Y. She was sweet, conflicted, but she helped out when she could. I dare say, setup-wise, she's better than Rose. I think she built up more interest from me in her first 2 and only 2 episodes than Rose did in her first 2. It sounds like your biggest criticism is the game stuff?
Yeah, it's going to be the game stuff.
Well, then mine has to be the way Rose gets vaporized at the end. I found that entirely unbelievable. Specifically that you have the Doctor and Captain Jack barging into the studio. Jack's got a big old gun and does nothing with it. He shoots it never once during that whole scene. There's ample time for him to shoot at the android, and they give it too much time to kill Rose.
Doctor was so caught up in trying to just do the warm embrace, the reunion embrace, and he never even thought to stop the murderous android.
And there were two contestants, Rose and another guy. I wanted her to run behind the black dude, and then the android kills him by mistake.
I was thinking that. I was just like, can't you just hide behind someone else?
Because that other contestant is set up to be a heel. You're not supposed to like him.
No.
So if he got killed by accident, nobody would mind in the audience.
No one's going to miss him.
That's what they do with him anyway in the second part.
I feel bad for him, but we'll get to that.
This first half, do you think it's closer to science fiction or science fantasy?
I'm going to go dystopian science fiction. We already mentioned Squid Games. Probably Running Man, just throwing people into murderous game shows.
This is the year 200,100. That's another detail I don't believe in. These games that began at least 100,000 plus years before, that they've lasted this long, really?
It's real life Anne Robinson made such a cultural impact, they had to make murder robots dedicated to her image.
Yeah, silly.
It is.
This is on the same level of silly as that Britney Spears Toxic.
Yeah.
What do you think is the darkest Ninth Doctor moment in this episode?
When he very gleefully threatens genocide to the Daleks.
And it's a promise that he doesn't even get to fulfill later on.
No, he doesn't get to fulfill it. I bet it made him sad.
It makes me sad because that's something I like about the Doctor. When he says he's going to do something, 99% of the time he does it, and that's why it makes it so powerful as a threat. So it's not good for his rep to threaten them and then not follow through.
Yeah, that's going to get out. He's going to look bad.
Word gets around the universe, people find out. Any other little details you'd like to point out?
At one point, when Jack was basically hitting on those fashion robots, he grabbed one of their boobs.
Oh, I saw that too.
Okay, good. he definitely molested that robot lady.
That wasn't in the script.
There's no way it said, and then Jack grabbed robot titty.
My detail is, why does the Ninth Doctor flirt so much with Linda?
That is a good question. If I had to guess, because he didn't have his full memory, right? So she was the first face he saw.
But he does it throughout the whole story.
Maybe he's just given up on Rose. He's just like, her and Jack are going to hook up. I got to find me some tail.
As far as romantic tension between the Doctor and Rose, I think the only glimpses of it we truly get are coming from her at certain points. Yeah, he seems a little jealous when Jack comes into the picture in Jack's two-parter. I don't think of him as someone on the prowl, and all of a sudden he's making eyes at Linda. What other times in the show has he behaved that way? Maybe the tree lady in End of the World? Who else?
No, those are the only two I could think of.
Yeah, so that's awkward that they would insert it this late into Eccleston's series.
She had, little pigtails, maybe. He's just in a specific hairstyle. Because the tree lady had, I want to say almost pigtails, but it was just roots growing out of the top of her head.
Yeah, nothing pigtailish about Tree Lady and her pine cone head. Do two things for me, John. Describe the cliffhanger, and then if you liked it or not.
Well, the cliffhanger is Rose getting vaporized before she can have a reunion with the Doctor. And then he already knew the Daleks were there. That was the actual cliffhanger, right?
Yeah, that was still in the first half.
Okay, good.
will you? That's nice. Hello.
The fleet is almost ready. You will not intervene.
Oh, really? Why's that then?
We have your associate. You will obey or she will be exterminated.
No.
What is the meaning of this negative?
It means no.
But she will be destroyed.
No! Because this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to rescue her. I'm going to save Rose Tyler from the middle of the Dalek fleet, and then I'm going to save the Earth, and then, just to finish off, I'm going to wipe every last stinking Dalek out of the sky!
But you have no weapons, no defenses, no plan.
Yeah. And doesn't that scare you to death?
I don't think I care for it, because everybody and their brother knew she wasn't dead. Even the preview was, hey, she's still alive.
I think what makes it less successful is when you see the second half, how it gets resolved. So then, let's segue into the 13th and final Christopher Eccleston episode, The Parting of the Ways. The Ninth Doctor and Captain Jack make a last stand to protect future Earth against the interstellar threat of the Dalek Armada. Fearing the worst, the Doctor sends Rose back home, but Rose enlists the help of Jackie and Mickey to return her to the fray and save the Doctor. But coming back to that cliffhanger, the resolution, I was trying to understand what I didn't like about the resolution, and it made me think of the best of both worlds. If they did that TNG two-parter the way it was done here, you have Picard showing up on the view screen. He's been turned into a Borg. Oh my god! We have to defeat the captain. He's turned evil. But imagine if in the first 5 minutes, and I think actually in this episode of Doctor Who it happened in 2 minutes, if Riker said to Worf, "Quick, get a transporter lock on him," and then Picard gets immediately transported to sickbay, and then Crusher immediately gives him a serum that turns him back into a human. It's such a quick fix at the beginning of The Parting of the Ways. It's like, oh, how's the Doctor going to save her? Oh, he saved her in the time it took me to ask.
Yeah, he's just going to show up with his force field.
It was clever in the Doctor dances because that resolution felt natural, how they get out of that scrape, go to your room. Okay, great, brilliant. I like it. Character motivated. But in this, ultimately why they resolve it so quickly is because this episode is overstuffed with details and actions that they're like, quick, we gotta get moving here.
We got better things to do than care if she's alive or dead, being in danger.
What do you think of the Ninth Doctor's regeneration scene versus the Doctors that came after him?
I like this the most. Every Doctor who comes after him blows up the TARDIS somehow.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot more pyrotechnics.
It's all this big special effects affair where the TARDIS gets screwed up and Matt Smith doesn't know how to fly it, or Peter Capaldi doesn't know how to fly it, or Jodie Whittaker. She didn't know how to fly it either. I think she was just like hanging from it.
Is that sexist?
Maybe.
Does she even have her TARDIS license?
Who knows?
It's one of the best principal protagonist deaths in sci-fi television. It makes me put it in the same class as the other John Crichton when he dies in Farscape.
Oh yeah.
They're on the same level. They're so touching. I can watch that scene over and over again. In this case, with the Ninth Doctor, it's moving, while also sending him out with dignity and a little bravado, going out the way he came in.
That speech of his, chef's kiss. It was so beautiful. Just, Rose, you were fantastic, but you know what? So was I.
I didn't watch the full context of Capaldi or Whittaker's regenerations, but I'm going to say the Ninth's is the best exit in modern Who, at least.
I don't even remember the context of Capaldi regenerating into Whittaker. I know when Matt Smith regenerated a Capaldi, it was basically old age. He died of old age, then he regenerated into Capaldi.
So that Matt Smith regeneration doesn't sound all that great.
No.
If he's that old, he's not the same character. Can't be.
No way. It's the same explosion stuff. He gets to be young again so that he can be Matt Smith out of old man makeup on the way out. And then he uses the regeneration energy to shoot down a bunch of Daleks. Like he's a World War II gunner.
This emphasis on action, I never thought that's what Doctor Who was.
No. He's supposed to be the suave, smart guy. Yes, there's action, but primarily first, he's a big brain.
Let's think about the episodes of Eccleston's run that had a lot of explosions, action. I think those are the weakest episodes.
World War III had a big explosion. The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances. I don't even think the Doctor Dances had explosions, but the Empty Child, because it was the London Blitz.
Much more integrated into the story.
It's a story, it's part of the background. It was never a part of the danger of the episode.
What would you rate the story in this finale from 1 to 5?
I'm going to give it a 5.
But are you propping the score up because it's his last one?
Absolutely. That's what makes it for me, the way he goes out. Dignified gentleman.
Tell me what's going on.
I absorbed all the energy of the time vortex, and no one's meant to do that. Every cell in my body's dying.
Can't you do something?
Yeah, I'm doing it now. Time Lords have this little trick. It's sort of a way of cheating death. Except it means I'm going to change. And I'm not going to see you again. And before I go...
Don't say that.
Rose, before I go, I just want to tell you were fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And you know what? So was I.
My knee-jerk was to give it a 5 in context.
That's just good reflexes.
But that was too simple. I realized, like with part 1, I don't buy a lot of the plot points. I had to go with a 4, which stems from the strength of the Doctor and Rose scenes, which we don't get a lot of when you think about this episode, because Rose got sent back to our present-day London. What was your favorite scene, besides the regeneration?
The whole confrontation with the Daleks, when he comes in, talking to them, the confidence he has in confronting the Emperor, and how the Emperor has also lost his mind. He made himself a god, and created a religion around what is supposed to just be mindless killing machine. So he's completely perverted the concept of Dalek. And the Doctor's just so angry at him, but he's so confident in the confrontation. And as soon as he gets behind that door, as soon as he gets behind the doors of the TARDIS and he shuts it, he needs a minute. He's got to collect himself because he is terrified. He's probably angry. He genocided his whole race and it meant nothing because the Emperor survived and made a whole other Dalek fleet. And that whole scene to me was just beautiful.
I like that in the episode Dalek, it's not like the Doctor lets go of all his rage at the Daleks, so that way we can play it up more in this finale.
Yeah.
So since we're not mentioning the regeneration for our favorite scene, then it has to be, for me, the Doctor's emergency hologram message to Rose.
Oh, yes.
Even if we were to put it side by side with the regeneration, because the regeneration scene ends with Tennant's goofy smile, I would give it to the emergency hologram anyway.
Sorry, Tennant. You're just too Scottish, I think.
Maybe you didn't get that feeling. With how beautiful Eccleston leaves, it's like cold water when Tennant shows up immediately right after that beautiful moment.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I do love Tennant, don't get me wrong. And you've said a million times there's too much running in his stuff. We'll get that out into the ether. But I think it was the right choice to have him be asleep the next episode. The audience just got used to the idea of not having the brilliant Eccleston anymore.
Maybe have him start his first episode in bed, but he stays in bed the whole episode. I decided to go and watch the third Doctor's first episode, and John Pertwee was in bed the whole episode, but at least that was only half hour, so Pertwee got up faster than Tennant did. Just another weak showing for Tennant's Doctor. When they're doing that emergency hologram message, and Rose is standing beside the hologram in the TARDIS, and the Doctor ends his message by turning his head and looking right at her, it gives me goosebumps.
The audio changed, too. Did you notice? The audio for the hologram up into that was clearly a pre-recorded filter on it. And then once he looked at her, the audio changed, too. It sounded like he was in the room with her.
Because it heightened that moment, but maybe they finally fired that sound design guy and brought in somebody better.
That was the moment? That was the exact moment they fired the sound design guy?
And because they didn't do it in sequence, that was like the one thing the new sound guy worked on. It's like, wow, I can clearly hear the dialogue. Great.
Excellent.
Give me at least one little scrap of criticism you have for Eccleston's final episode.
I'm going to harp on Jack. The scene when they're all on floor 000 and he's looking for volunteers to go die, and he's making them all feel bad for not wanting to die, even though they all just escaped a death game. That's not cool, Jack. They literally just got out of the life or death situation, and you're being a dick about it.
I couldn't tell if he honestly thought they had a chance, or if he was deliberately lying to the people that were going to help.
There was another scene where they're all shooting at the stocks, and she's just like, I think he lied to us, this isn't working, and then the lady immediately gets exterminated.
I heard Russell T. Davies say in an interview that episodes that play with paradoxes, like in Father's Day, were rare in Classic Who, that he thought it was strange considering it's a time travel show.
Mm-hmm.
I think that means the writers back then in Classic Who were smarter, because it's exceedingly difficult to do a paradox story that won't get dinged for its time mechanics.
Yeah.
All the people that die on the space station while Rose is trying to get back, the TARDIS didn't want to take her to before all those people were killed by the Daleks.
No, TARDIS didn't care.
It could have showed up whenever it wanted to.
She could have. At one point, she was in control of the time vortex.
Rose takes in the energy of the TARDIS, and they give us that flashback to Boomtown, so we'll remember that plot detail.
Even though it was the episode right before the start of this arc.
They play the drama like, oh, it's happening concurrently when she's in the past. And like her mother said, well, it hasn't even happened yet.
Why, you said he's not going to die for another 200,000 years.
Rose, when she does finally get to the future, she allows for all that time in her relative existence to also be the amount of time that goes by in the future. So she shows up after the Armada bombed some of Earth's continents, didn't it?
Yeah, a couple of ships went down and started destroying Earth. Everyone was stuck inside watching TV.
So if we're doing a dystopian Earth where there's overpopulation, the Daleks probably killed billions.
Probably helped with a lot of problems.
And then Rose resurrected Captain Jack. You notice she didn't do that for Linda. Was that out of spite because she was jealous of the Doctor giving Linda attention?
I wrote that down. I never brought Linda back because she was flirting with the Doctor.
It is consistent with the Rose character. She's clever at times. I wouldn't call her one of the smartest companions he's had. I think Q would accuse her of thinking too linearly.
He would. It's weird, because I think the Master was making fun of Martha Jones, and he said, you've had companions who absorb the whole time vortex. This girl can't even do math or something dumb like that.
But Linda's my favorite side character from the season. She doesn't even get much of a death scene. She was there to remind us that Rose is the final girl.
She's got to go. She's just a bump in the road to Rose superiority.
And in this finale, does this lean closer to science fiction or fantasy?
It was doing real good in fiction until Super Weapon fixed it all. And then it became fantasy.
Until Rose became a god.
Rose became a god and created herself and intentionally left a potential fling for the Doctor dead.
Let's say I believe that she couldn't directly stop everything that led up to this two-parter. That had to happen for some space dragon time paradox reason. When she leaves Bad Wolf scattered throughout their adventures so that it gives Rose the idea that she can go back to the future and help the Doctor and not lose hope, wouldn't it have been a much easier thing in that scene where she's with Mickey and they're on the concrete and they're looking at graffiti and Rose is like, "Oh my god, it says Bad Wolf over there. Oh, and over here, I've seen it lots of places."
That's beautiful, beautiful.
Hey man, I love to bring up my bad accents.
It's so good.
You close your eyes, it's like you're talking to Billy Piper.
It really is. It is, straight up. Oh, she's in the room.
Why does it need to be scattered throughout time as Bad Wolf? Why doesn't God Rose just put it then and there to tell Rose, and don't even say Bad Wolf, just write on the wall in great giant letters, "Hey Rose, go and open the TARDIS console. Love, God Rose." It doesn't need to be Bad Wolf.
Yeah. Use a truck to open the console. Love, God Rose. P.S. Don't forget to do sit-ups. You'll thank me later.
I suppose God Rose knew it was going to work because she existed to do it, and satisfy that loop.
Mm-hmm.
Did they explain what gave Rose the idea to use Bad Wolf?
It was literally the word she was staring at when she decided to do it. It was the name of the corporation on the wall.
Oh, so that's just more of the infinite loop, that she gave herself the idea to do it.
The visual effect was her sending the words from the wall into time.
Oh, I think it is too, now that you mention it. No, I feel icky. All this stuff we're pointing out, though, let's be clear, has nothing to do with Eccleston.
No, not at all.
Does it look like the Ninth Doctor had much of an arc in his only season?
I'd like to say yes, because when he first started, he didn't care too much about anybody. And then, by the end, he was just so... like, he couldn't even kill the Daleks. He called himself a happy coward. He couldn't even pull the trigger on the Delta Wave to murder everybody.
But would the Ninth Doctor from the first episode... I can't believe he couldn't have potentially come to the same conclusion. The fact that he was going to kill everybody on Earth by unleashing that Delta Wave. I don't really see a huge change, except for maybe interpersonal stuff. Like the way he hangs out with Captain Jack and Rose toward the end. I don't think the Doctor from the first episode would have behaved that way.
The first few episodes, every time Rose met a man, he would complain, like, "Oh, it's your boyfriend."
Well, let's be real. Captain Jack was basically both their boyfriends.
That was part of the intrigue for the Doctor. Alright, who's gonna bang him first? Rose, it's a race.
Any little details you'd like to point out?
I think in the first episode of this, we talked about how much makeup Rose was wearing. And it felt like one of her tears from Billy Piper's good acting at the end had carved a trough down her face.
It practically got stuck in the makeup.
Yeah.
The viscosity wouldn't let it fall from her face.
She's become almost clay.
She had glitter on her face, didn't she? I swear I thought I saw glitter.
She might have, as, like, space god superiority to prove that, like, she could put glitter on and then have it disappear.
I don't want to sound like I'm conflating good taste with not caking on the makeup, but the creator of New Who has described Rose as a shop girl, and she certainly is in the first episode. I want her to evolve more than she has in this finale, where maybe she's wearing less makeup or change something about her appearance after all this time with the Doctor. If you compare how she looked in the first episode to this finale, basically the same.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall how you felt about this episode in its original run?
I loved it. I was sad to see Eccleston go, and I was excited to see what Tennant was going to be up to.
It was a gut punch, man, because I couldn't believe Eccleston only did one season. There have been questions if it was always intention for him to do only one. For my research, it looks like it was always meant to be just the one series in British terms.
Story-wise, right, you've got to introduce everything about Doctor Who, and Regeneration's one of the big ones, so it seems like the logical conclusion to the first season.
Forgetting that we know what happens next, based on this rewatch, what questions do you think should be answered in Series 2?
They're really vague on the whole Time War aspect. I would have liked to see more about that.
And they don't get into that until, what, basically the end of Tennant into Matt Smith?
I think the 50th anniversary episode, that's when they bring it up. And you get to hang out with John Hurt as a surprise Doctor.
Because Christopher Eccleston wouldn't come back.
Yeah.
That's the only reason the War Doctor existed. What's Eccleston's legacy, do you think, in the greater Who franchise?
He was the most adult Doctor. Like, a big thing is everyone's first Doctor. It's like your first Bond. I think he was a lot of people's first Doctor. You never forget your first.
I don't know if I agree with that. Technically, my first Bond would have been Pierce Brosnan, but he's not my favorite.
Oh. It's another podcast.
If we shoot down that theory, John, I think it helps give Eccleston more props. It's not just because he's my first Doctor that I like him, and I think this rewatch has proven that for me. And even as silly as some of the stories got this year, when I think about stuff that happens later on in New Who, like I thought when this came out that Aliens of London was the floor. No, once you get into Matt Smith and later, there's a whole sub-basement you didn't realize existed with how stupid it could get.
I remember watching all the behind-the-scenes stuff of him leading up to the role and him talking about the number one reason he took the role was because the writing was good and he was a big fan of Russell T Davies. I guess he hates him with a passion. So that's such a weird flip.
And I believe he said because at that point in his career, people told him he wasn't funny or charming. So this was something he could show, I have range, I can do this. Because a few years previous, I believe they shot his series in 2004, and what was it, 2000, 2001, Gone in 60 Seconds, he was the bad guy in that.
Oh, yeah.
And wasn't he also the bad guy in 28 Days Later?
Yes, he was. But he was much better in 28 Days Later than he was in Gone in 60 Seconds.
And then unfortunately when Eccleston left Who, what was the next big thing he did? He was, when did Thor The Dark World come out? Oh, I think that was like 2014 or something. That was way later. He reverted back to the roles he was doing before Who, it seems.
He was doing classic, almost Shakespearean stuff, very dramatic roles. He shines in those, but it was fun to watch him show the charisma and the comedy.
You know, he did another collaboration with Davies before Doctor Who.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, it's called Second Coming, where Eccleston is the second coming of Christ.
Ooh.
It seems they had a good working relationship going into Doctor Who, and then leaving it, famously, Eccleston has name-dropped Davies as someone he doesn't like. Maybe it's the fact that the profile of the show was so much bigger, maybe more pressure on Davies, and maybe that made him cut some corners that Eccleston didn't appreciate.
I could see that. Yeah, you're in a tighter schedule.
Because one of the things Eccleston has said is that the production wasn't completely respectful to the day-to-day folks that were working on it. Also, in the years since Eccleston was on the show, I saw a clip of Billie Piper answering the question of who her doctor was. Who do you think her doctor was?
I'm hoping she said Eccleston.
I was hoping as well. No, she said Tennant.
Ah, son of a... No offense, David.
The first series, there was so much pressure, and it was an unproven quantity. But by the second series with Tennant, she was more comfortable in the role. It was a success. So she said she was able to have more fun, and that's why she considers Tennant her doctor.
But
she worked with Eccleston, man.
Yeah.
You should still say Eccleston.
What the heck?
And also, with Eccleston naming names all these years later, he's always had nothing but nice words for Billie Piper. That kind of loyalty, man, that's another reason she should say him.
They're still doing press junket stuff together, right? For, like, the fan fests?
Supposing they announced a new spin-off of Doctor Who, and we don't know who the creator is, we don't know any of the production people involved, but what if they said they want to bring Eccleston back, and let's say he agreed to it? Would you be excited?
Yeah, I would. Probably a fool's errand, but I think I would be absolutely excited.
Doctor Who, for me, has twisted to a point where I really don't have the same level of fandom for it that I had 10, 15 years ago, that I would be willing to just forget all the other continuity and pretend like nothing happened after Eccleston's exit. Going in a little bit more into Eccleston's problems behind the scenes. So I knew that the BBC had let the cat out of the bag earlier than it was supposed to, that Eccleston was only doing one season. But do you know specifically when in Eccleston's run they let people know he wasn't coming back?
No, I don't think I do.
I looked up an article where they made an apology, and the date of that versus the date of the episode's airing, they told the press that he wasn't coming back before the second episode aired.
Damn.
Could you imagine if, when Tennant was still in the role, after his first episode, they already say, oh, he's not coming back. And we've already reached out to this other guy. What a slap in the face.
It is. Right after the Christmas invasion, to come on and be like, alright, Matt Smith is going to take over for David Tennant.
And Eccleston had an agreement with the BBC to keep it quiet until the full series had aired. No wonder he didn't want to come back after that crap.
The complete disrespect.
Not that it was a huge gamble on Eccleston's part. Maybe the main thing he was gambling was his time to shoot that show in 2004. He came on to something that had failed and was off the air at that point. So to have him take that chance with them, and then that's how they repay him.
He did him a huge solid.
But let's get into some Eccleston stats. For one thing, Eccleston didn't have an official Christmas special like the guys that came after him, but technically he did if you look at The Unquiet Dead, which was set at Christmas, and if you aired that as a special, I would have bought that as his Christmas special. Eccleston did have a Dalek story, like everybody else after him. He had multiple companions, just like the ones after him.
Yeah.
He did go to the future and the past. He went technically to multiple countries. I think the United States was the only other country he went to.
The Dalek episode took place in Utah.
He never had a costume change. Never even put on a spacesuit like Tennant did in some episodes.
Mm-hmm.
He never reconnected with a previous companion. What else can you say about his run?
He never left Earth. He never got to go to an alien world.
Not a world, no. The best we got was that space station. That showed up 3 times.
That's not even very far away. That's not even like the moon. He got no other recurring Who villains. He never got to see the Master, the Cybermen, or the Centaurans, who all showed up for, I think, everybody else.
Well, all those were in Tennant's run, weren't they?
Yeah.
And to this day, at least of this recording, in Modern Who, he's the only guy to do it for 1 year. And haven't they already confirmed that the newest guy, he is shooting multiple seasons?
Yeah, I think that's already another BBC masterclass in keeping their shit together in the press junket.
But living in a world where Eccleston did more seasons, I would like to have seen stronger sci-fi, high-concept episodes. Like, what if Blink had been in the Eccleston era?
That was a cold episode, because he willingly sent a bunch of people to their angel death to get out of it. I think it would have been even darker than it was with Tennant.
I'm okay with that.
Because it's almost full-on horror story as it is.
I don't believe any of those people, they weren't immediately murdered in the Doctor's plan, right? They just got sent back to the past. They still got to live out their lives, but totally manipulated.
I know a couple minorities got sent back to the past. That's what they needed, to be sent back to pre-civil rights.
And yet, that black dude that had the DVD company, I guess that was the best thing for him.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That felt a little weird. That didn't quite make sense to me. Like, wow, so you send a black dude back to what, like the 50s or 60s Britain?
Mm-hmm.
And he turned into a success story. Okay, that's what I thought was going to happen.
That's exactly what I thought was going to happen. He wasn't going to befriend any neo-Nazis or anything.
And more character development. Like, imagine Eccleston got to really talk about his family as the Doctor. What if River Song had come into an Eccleston episode? The dynamic would have been totally different with her.
Yeah.
But as we land this plane and say goodbye to Christopher Eccleston as the Ninth Doctor, John, do you have any final words you'd like to send out there? And maybe Christopher will hear this?
Mr. Eccleston, you're my first Doctor. You're my favorite Doctor. Stay classy.
My final thoughts on Eccleston. There was so much working against him. Not that there were nefarious forces at work. The quality of the writing, it got better during Tennant. I think that's just because they had worked out a lot of stuff in the first year, and it was continuing instead of beginning. Out of all the things that could have been, on the same level of what I used to feel of, oh, what if we got an episode 7 of Star Wars? What would happen with Han, Luke, and Leia?
We'll never know.
Yeah. So maybe it's better that it seems like we'll never know the Ninth Doctor again in live action. There's no way to sully his reputation.
Yeah. We gotta keep our baby pure.
And I bet you're fussing and moaning now. Typical. But hold on and just listen a bit more. Let the TARDIS die. Just let this old box gather dust. No one can open it, no one will even notice it. Let it become a strange little thing standing on a street corner. And over the years, the world will move on and the box will be buried. And if you want to remember me, then you can do one thing. That's all. One thing. Have a good life. Have a fantastic life.